What to say, everybody? Paul from Cleveland. I am in the garage. I'm going to knock out a quick project today. Something that my wife asked for. She wanted me to make her a flower pot. And I thought, why not get it on video? So let's get things turned around and get started. Now what I'm doing is, I've got a set of molds. They are aluminum molds that you bolt together and pour concrete into to make flower pots. Now these molds have a grape leaf and grape design. It's a Grecian design is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to simulate a Grecian urn is what it is. And I have a set of round molds. I have a round mold and a rectangle mold. Now I have made a couple pots with the rectangle mold, but I've yet to try this round mold. And so my wife asked me if I would break it out and make her a round flower pot. So what I have to do here is I've got to try and talk and work at the same time because I've got to get these bolted together. So I've got a pile of bolts here. Now these molds were originally owned by my grandfather, and he made flower pots with these things for years. And then when he passed away back in the 90s, my dad took them and made flower pots with them. And then when he passed away 2 years ago, I brought them home, and I've tried making a few pots with them. And let me say that this is possibly one of the most difficult things that I've ever tried to do. I've made 2 pots that were usable, and that's about all you can say is they were usable. I had one that turned out so bad I ended up breaking it up into pieces and using it to fill a low spot next to my driveway. Again, like I said, this is a challenge, getting this to work. So I figure, I'll get this on video, and you can see just how challenging this is. So how you bolt this together is these pieces are numbered, which of course the numbers are obscured by some concrete residue that's still on the molds. So what I'm going to do is don't know whether you can see that, but that's a number 1 and that's number 2. And that's a 4. And that is number 1. So I match up the 2 ones and I bolt them together. And try not to drop the washers and the screws and everything else. I'll tell you what, let me just get a different one. Now, like I said, these molds were originally owned by my grandfather, and I can remember years ago he made pots with these, and I remember watching him one summer. Well, actually a couple times I can remember watching him make these pots. And I had, when I brought these back from my mother's house, one of the things I also got with these 2 pot molds was the original catalog that my grandfather had, that he either sent off and got originally to order these molds, or got later trying to order more molds. I don't know. But I had the catalog, and it was part catalog, part instructional booklet on how to use these molds. And I had, over on my workbench, I had an envelope that I thought was the catalog, and I grabbed the envelope, and it was just some photographs that my mother had sent back of old family photographs she thought I might want. So I'm kind of bummed that I don't know where I've put that catalog. I'll have to, I'll find it when we go to move. Or it's been one of those things where, wait a minute, I'm going to check my numbers here. That's a 3. Nope, I'm bolting a 3 to a 2. So it's got to be this one. Yep, it's this one. What was I saying? Oh, the catalog. Yeah, I'm bummed that I can't find that catalog. And I can't even remember what the name of the company is that makes these molds. Now, I do remember that when I had that catalog, I searched the company name on Google, and the company is still in existence. If I can think of the name of it, I'll drop it somewhere in this video. One thing I did note is when I was flipping through that catalog, hundreds of different types of molds that you could buy to make all sorts of things. Bird baths, flower pots, I mean all sorts of stuff. Anything. They even had a section in there where you could buy molds to make tombstones, funeral memorials, if you would be inclined to want a concrete tombstone. But one of the things that they had was, at the time that they printed that catalog, is you could buy molds to make lawn jockeys. The figurines of the little jockeys with the lanterns in their hands. And they had 2 different molds. And one of the molds had some very overly accentuated, stereotypical black features. I won't, describe any more from there. And I was curious to see if they actually still sold lawn jockey molds, and they don't. They've long since disappeared off the company website. But I can understand why. Now, when I get these things bolted together, the next step that I have to do is I have to lube these things. In that, what I did do when I had that catalog is I did leaf through the instructional portion of it. And one of the things that the company stated that you had to do with these molds is you had to apply a release agent in order to get them to work properly. And the release agent that they recommended that you use is used motor oil, which I thought was hilarious when I read that, because, how many people today have used motor oil laying around? But back in the day, when he ordered these, which was probably every bit of, 45 years ago, possibly, many, many more people changed their own oil. Today, even if you're a hardcore DIY person, it's still more convenient to go through the Take 5 or Valvoline or one of those. I gotta find my screwdriver here. And so I don't have any. Actually, I do have some used motor oil laying around from the last time I changed the oil on my motorcycle. But what I'm going to use instead is I've got some leftover valve oil, or not valve oil, gear oil, from when I did the rebuild job on my differential off of my Suburban. So I'll just use the remainder of that. Really not anything to this. You just get a little oil on the brush and work them in. I suppose if you weren't really careful, you could build up globs of oil in some of these crevices, and that would prevent the concrete from fully getting into all the all the finer detail. So what I try to do is wherever I see a foamy bit, I then just kind of give it a little bit of additional brushing. My grandfather was an interesting man. He worked on the railroad all his life, and he was a beekeeper. He made flower pots. He had a ginseng patch that he grew. I can remember back in, it was probably back in the early 80s. He and my uncle would go out in the woods, and they would look for ginseng, which is interesting because I think there's a TV show on one of the cable networks now about guys that raise and hunt for ginseng, and there's big money in ginseng. And what my grandfather would do is he would go out and look for it, and when he would find it, he wouldn't just pull it up, he would actually transplant it, because the part of the ginseng plant that's valuable is the root. And so rather than destroy the root, he would take all these plants that he would find, and he had a patch of ground that was kind of semi-secluded, and he would replant all the ginseng on this patch that he had. And I can remember back in the 80s, probably somewhere right around 81, 82, somewhere in that area, the price of ginseng skyrocketed. There was this, massive spike in ginseng prices. And he actually went through and dug up his entire ginseng patch and sold it. I forget, at the time, it was an outlandish amount of money that he made off of this ginseng patch. But, that's... My dad, my uncle, and my grandfather, they were very much a part of a transitioning culture. It's about the best way that I could describe it. They were the last of what you would perhaps describe as old traditional mountain people. We didn't live, my grandparents lived in Kentucky, and we were really sort of on the edge of what you would describe as real, hardcore Appalachia America. The old mountain people. Well, my grandfather especially was sort of like part of that last generation of the old mountain people. And my grandmother used to tell me when I was a kid stories about what it was like for them living through the Great Depression and the Second World War, and it was interesting. Now my dad, he attended a one-room schoolhouse when he was a child. In fact, my niece, my sister's daughter, had my dad come and speak to her class when she was in grade school and tell stories to them of what it was like back in the days of, being educated in a one-room schoolhouse. So again, they were part of a transitioning America, if you will, when old ways were kind of going away and, the modern world was more or less coming into being. My dad's grandfather, my great-grandfather, today the term that we would use to describe him is he was an herbalist. But back in those days, they called them folk doctors. And he had, remedies that he would make out of local, plants. I'm sure ginseng was probably one of them. Because many drugs that people take today, have in their origin plants. Digoxin, the heart medication, comes from a plant called the foxglove, which originally was a poison. But then who was it? I should know this. I'm a scientist. The phrase "only the dose determines a poison." What they figured out was that the agent in the foxglove plant that was poisoning people, if you administered it in smaller amounts, it actually strengthened people's heart rate. And so, a lot of medicines have their start in old folk remedies. Well, my dad described a ledger that my great-grandfather had that contained all of his folk remedy recipes. And I would love to see that ledger. Who knows where it ever went to. He had, I forget how many, he had numerous children by 2 different wives. And I'm sure, and oddly enough, several sets of identical twins. And I'm sure one of the sons got hang on, folks, my radio is doing something really weird over there. I'm going to unplug it. That popping and crackling noise that you hear, if the microphone's picking it up, it's static in my radio. Of course, I keep the radio turned down, obviously, for copyright reasons, but it was picking up something. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah. My grandfather was one of the children that my great-grandfather had from his second wife. And in fact, my grandfather was one of the sets of twins. My grandfather's name was Willard, and he had a brother, identical twin brother, named Millard. And there was another set of twins. I think their name was Arthur and Estel, that went by the nicknames Eck and Erie. Now, how they ever came up with Eck and Erie, I don't know. That's probably a very interesting family story, but yeah, 2 sets of twins in the family. So yeah, I'm sure probably one of the older brothers from the first marriage probably ended up with that medical book. But I would so love to see that book and see, what those recipes said. My dad told me that towards the end of his life, part of the reason, or one of the things that was causing his grandfather a lot of physical distress towards the end was that he was complicating his health by some of the remedies that he was mixing up and administering to himself. And he was caught up in what happens a lot in our modern culture is he was mixing up these herbal potions and taking them, which was causing other conditions that he was then mixing up other potions to treat. Much like what happens today, in polypharmacy situations today. People want to take that statin drug for their cholesterol, and then it makes them impotent, so they got to have the little blue pill for impotency, and then that causes something else, which causes something else. Next thing you know, you're taking 12 different medications. I told my doctor under no circumstances was I going to take a statin drug. I just flat refused. Not when you read the health warnings right there in the literature, and it says that acute renal failure is a potential side effect. Sorry, I can live with higher cholesterol. I don't want to crap out my kidneys. But anyway, I'm just flapping my gums here, finishing up lubing this pot. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I just got to get this one done. All right, now the last thing I have to do is I got to flip this one over on top of this one. And I've also learned that with these molds, they usually, at least the rectangle mold, it only fits one way. And so if it doesn't fit, you have to, you rotate it or turn it until you get the holes to line up. Now either this one is not that way, or I just got lucky the first time. So I'm gonna grab some more bolts. I'll finish bolting this thing up, and it's gonna be time to pour this thing. Well, I apologize for the shadow. I'm, aside from making a total mess, trying to stay out of the sun because the sun and me do not get along. Quickcrete mortar mix is what I use to make these things with, and it actually works pretty good. Probably too much water. Now, I use this old coal shovel to pour it in. Now, I don't put it all in at once. I'll show you what I do. Take a little bit. May need to mix up some more, but that's okay because it takes a while for this stuff to set. Now, let me get my tool. Now I have this plastic tube that I don't even know what this came off of, but I just put it in there and just work it. Just work it up and down, and vibrate that mix, and try and get as much air out of it as I can. Another thing that you can do is if you have an orbital sander, you can fire it up and just hold it to the side, and that will vibrate air out of it. Well, I got too much, but that's okay. Just screed it over the side and it'll be fine. Now this is what my dad used to do. He would take a rubber mallet. Alright, I'm going to leave that alone. The rest of this I will take up and dump in a low spot near the driveway. Alright, now just a quick update on this. It's been about 2.5 hours. Now what will happen is, as this thing starts to dry out very quickly, water will drain out from the various cracks and crevices, and so a area will form around the perimeter that will begin to sink, and then that causes a dome to form in the middle. And so several times as this thing starts to settle and dry out, you have to go back and re-screed, I think that's the term, and basically re-flatten this area. Otherwise you'll have, you know, a big dome. And so what I have found is this old piece of, I think this is Lexan. I don't even remember what that's from. I think this is actually from an old cutting board that I used for something. But I just kind of just lay this on there and just, you know, just very gently just work it, you know, just work it so that everything gets smoothed back out again. Now in this case I got a little bit of a low spot over here, so I'm going to drag a little bit of material from this side and redeposit it over here. think I'm gonna leave it at that, because the more I do, the more I just keep messing it up. So I'm leaving it alone. Then I'm just gonna let that sit for about 3 days, and then we'll take it apart. All right, it's time to crack this bad boy open. Extra hard. It's been about 48 hours, which should be more than enough time. First thing I have to do is I gotta flip him over. And if you can tell I'm out of breath, that's just from carrying the thing over here. This booger is heavy. Oh. Oh yeah. Okay. What do I do with my, excuse my arm. Oh, you would know the last of the four I gotta get the wrench out for. Alright, first thing I do is I pry this middle out, and I just very gently just work the screwdriver in. I'm going to get a bigger screwdriver. This is more like it. Okay, this one's going to be a rough one. You can't get too aggressive with doing this, or you'll break your mold. You know, or seriously damage it. Alright, there it goes. And out comes the middle. I've never gotten one of these to come out perfectly. There's always a certain amount of chip. Ooh, this one's bad. This one's bad. Not enough. I don't think I got enough. Ooh. Yeah. That's not good. Yeah, it's chipped pretty bad. Yeah. No, this one's not. This one's a fail. May have, not enough, who knows, not enough oil. Didn't, let it go long enough. I don't know. Let me get the camera over here and I'll show you. See here, let me tell you what, let me come around. Oh, yeah. Anything worse than my concrete work is my camera work. See all that and all that? Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. I always get a little bit of that, like here, you see a little chip out. There's always some, but not that bad. That's, yeah, that's not good. So, basically what's going to happen with this pot is I'll let it dry out really good, and then I'll end up breaking it up. Alright, let me get back up here. Okay, what's going to end up happening with this pot is I'll take it out of the mold. I will let it dry the rest of the way. Maybe I'll see if I can salvage it by trying to scrape down some of this, to scrape it down to the level of where it's broke. If not, what I'll end up doing with this thing is I'll end up just busting it up into pieces and dumping it along the driveway. I hate to do that, but yeah, I'll be honest with you. This has been one of the most difficult things I've ever tried to do, is these concrete pots. I've never gotten one that didn't chip to a certain extent. My grandfather could crank these things out like magic. I have no idea how he did it. Because I have struggled doing this. My dad struggled doing this. Neither one of us ever really got the technique down. So I'm thinking that probably what's going to happen, I really don't want to do any more of these. It's aggravating. It's not fun. It's very dissatisfying. So before I move, I probably will take these molds, clean them up, and drop them on Craigslist for sale, and just let somebody else aggravate themselves with it. Because this, like I said, this is aggravating. This is not enjoyable. So I'll see what I can do. Let's see here if I can. Oh, no. All right, this is a total failure. Complete failure. Let me show you. Watch this. Oop. That just came off. Okay. But this whole side is split. Ooh. Yeah. Look at that. Not only this is, boy, this one's bad. Bad. I didn't get any of the air out of that thing. Nothing. Look how much air was still in that. Like I said, these are hard. This is not fun. I do not enjoy doing this. So I'm really, like I said, I'm thinking about just dropping these molds on Craigslist, dumping them, and let somebody else frustrate themselves with it. So, guys, I'm gonna leave it at that. This has been an exercise in complete frustration, and I'm about tired of being frustrated by this. So, thanks for watching. Maybe if I, get tenacious and try another one, maybe I'll include that as well. So, Paul from Cleveland, take care, guys.